Tulsi Gabbard said that there was a treasonous conspiracy has been launched that she uncovered.
In the months leading up to the 2016 election, the intelligence community assessed, and this is what the documents detail, the intelligence community assessed essentially Russia doesn't have the tools, the capability, or the intent to try to change the outcome of the U.S. presidential election. Donald Trump pulls off a historic victory against Hillary Clinton in November of 2016. Even in the days after that election, the intelligence community continued their consistent assessment that reflected the same thing in the months leading up to the election. All of a sudden, in the early days of December, there was a president's daily brief that was drafted. This is put together by the different elements of the intelligence community that reflected that same assessment. Russia did not try to hack the election, in essence. That PDB, that document, was pulled hours before it was supposed to be published for the president to see that following morning. That document was never published until we released it yesterday. One day later, President Obama calls a meeting of his National Security Council, his top officials, to be held on what they called a sensitive topic. And the results of that meeting, which we released yesterday, and these over 100 documents that talk about in detail how President Obama and his team, he directed a manufactured piece of intelligence that detailed not if, but how Russia tried to influence the outcome of the United States election that President Trump won in November of 2016. This document was then used as the foundation for everything that came next. What these documents detail, to me, in my view, cannot be explained as anything but a treasonous conspiracy. This is not so different from what we saw under George W. Bush, when we saw that manufactured intelligence claiming there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq that kicked off a war that changed our country, that changed the lives of so many people like myself who went and served in those wars. The implications of manufactured intelligence are real.
Okay, that's a very, very serious charge, manufactured intelligence. And the gist of what she's talking about here, and we'll detail this in just a minute, where she's saying that in 2016, the Obama administration, before President Trump assumed office on January 20th of 2017, that they had intelligence that Russia had been trying to manipulate the American election, but she's going to claim that they failed, and then that the Obama team said, you know what, let's change this. One of the big arguments that she's making here is that there is this, not creeping coup, how did she play it? A years-long coup. That's why she says a treasonous conspiracy, because she's arguing that Obama and a number of other people, very high-ranking in the Obama organization, said that they were actually trying to unseat President Trump. And so she says that there needs to be accountability.
These actions that were taken demand accountability. The American people not only deserve the truth and accountability, when we look at the future of our country as a democratic republic and the American people's ability to have faith that when they go and cast a vote at the ballot box, that the will of the people will be respected by those in government, whether they be Democrats or Republicans, this is literally what is at stake here. So we are referring all of our documents to the Department of Justice for the purpose of accountability and action.
That is truly a bombshell. If the Trump administration, if she refers this to the DOJ and they bring charges, and you're talking about, and I think it was actually named in some of her documents, is Obama himself, James Clapper. I think he was the DNI at the time, the head of the CIA. I mean, some very, very high-ranking people are named in her documents, which you can find online. They're all out there. She released like more than 100, I think, last night. But I want to show you the gist of what she's arguing here. This is according to a press release issued by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. And the key things that she says here is, in the month leading up to the November 2016 election, the intelligence community consistently assessed that Russia is, quote, probably not trying to influence the election by using cyber means. Now, I'm going to highlight a few words here because those are going to be really key to what is actually going on here. So more on that as we go. Next, on December 7th, 2016, after the election, talking points were prepared for the DNI James Clapper, stating, quote, foreign adversaries did not use cyber attacks on election infrastructure to alter the U.S. presidential outcome, end quote. After December 9th meeting, DNI Clapper's executive assistant sent an email to IC, that's in intelligence community, that's what they call it, the IC leaders, tasking them with creating a new IC assessment, quote, per the president's request, she says. That details the, quote, tools Moscow used and actions it took to influence the 2016 election, end quote. It went on to say that, quote, ODNI will lead this effort with participation from CIA, FBI, NSA, and DHS. Obama officials leaked false statements, she claims, to media outlets, including the Washington Post, claiming that, quote, Russia has attempted claiming that Russia has attempted through cyber means to interfere in, and I should have highlighted that word there, if not actively influence the outcome of an election. Now, there are two things that are at stake here. One is that up to that second bullet there, foreign adversaries did not use cyber attacks on election infrastructure to alter the U.S. presidential election outcome. That's what the intelligence assessment was at the time. And in case you're not familiar with that, the claim was that Russia was going to try and actually change the vote and make sure that Trump won, according to the claim that that's what Russia wanted to do. Those, by the intelligence community's own assessment, were unsuccessful, that Russia didn't have the capacity, and that whatever attempts they may have made through some of these bot farms and some of these other things that they did were not successful at all, and none of it stuff. So all the firewalls held, none of the stuff got into that, and so none of the votes were changed. So that was a complete and utter failure. If that was the Russia's attempt, it was a total fiasco. But the influence was a separate issue. Most of the information that came out at the time was that, yes, Russia definitely did use it. I remember seeing a report many years ago now that detailed how Russia had tried to do this, but it was a pretty small scale. They used a number of bot farms and influencers to try and influence people in one direction or another. And I remember thinking at the time that it was a pathetic effort. Because the American people aren't stupid. Look, we've got a lot of people trying to influence the election fair and free and open here in the United States, and there are millions of social media posts, etc., and ads and speeches by various campaigns, whatever. Those are the things that flood us every day, and this comparatively fraction of a tiny percent that Russia had. I mean, you can't even say it was 1%. It was some very small sliver mixed into this. And the idea that Russia is going to be able to influence the American people is just ludicrous. And it's embarrassing that people actually thought that, because the American people are going to come up to whatever voice decision they want. And they're paying attention to American commentary or other people. And yeah, you can slip things in here and there, like AI does all the time with other kinds of bots. Lots of people were trying very aggressively to influence things one way or the other. But Americans come to the choice that they come to. I mean, we're not stupid in that sense. We're going to go with wherever our emotions are. And everybody is trying to influence us. So this is lost in a sea of a lot of people trying. So I thought the whole thing was kind of overblown and kind of ridiculous. But the question at hand is, though, that did the Obama administration manipulate intelligence? As Tulsi said there, that they changed the intelligence in order to make something happen. And now then we have to get into the fact that, are there two separate things that we're talking about here? Was there, one, an attempt by Russia to change the vote through cyber means to try to get into the machines and change the vote tallies, etc.? And was there also an attempt to influence the election? It's very clear in there's no confusion on this point that they definitely tried to interfere. That's common knowledge. But the question is, did the Obama administration change the intelligence? And that's what Tulsi's claiming. Now, there's others who don't agree with that. And in fact, Senator Warner on the Democratic side, I was curious to see what their reaction was going to be. They certainly have one. This is being reported this morning in the New York Times. Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, the top Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, said the new report, quote, compared two different things: Russian attempts to hack the voting systems and Russian influence operations meant to sway public opinion. We're talking about apples and oranges, he said. The Russians were not successful at manipulating our election infrastructure, nor did we say they were. Mr. Warner noted that as recently as March, the intelligence community reported that Russia had continued its malign influence to sow dissent in the West. And that's, again, something I'm like, well, obviously they do. Every country does that. We definitely do that. We commonly use information operations. Every country does to one degree or another to try and sway opinion in the target audience or target country, to sway the public, to maybe make them think things the way we want to. It's pretty common and understood. And Russia, I think, has virtually no effect at doing that. I mean, Russia's been saying all kinds of stuff, everything about the Russia-Ukraine war, issues about elections or whatever. They may have their views, they may have their subtle attempts, but it just falls flat. And it doesn't have any more success than ours do over there. But again, those are actually secondary things at the moment. The question is, was there a conspiracy, and did the Obama administration actually try to unseat Trump? Because that's the charge. A years-long coup is the phrase that she used here. Now, interestingly enough, the question is, why now? Why is this coming out right now? And why did no one say anything about this before, especially during the first Trump administration when the Republicans were in charge of everything? Well, as it turns out, they actually spent a lot of time looking into these very issues. And here's Julian Barnes in the New York Times from 2020, when he wrote that, but on Tuesday, a long-awaited Senate review by the members of Mr. Trump's own party effectively undercut those allegations. A three-year review by the Republican-led Senate Intelligence Committee unanimously found that the intelligence community assessment pinning the blame on Russia and outlining its goals to undercut American democracy was fundamentally sound and untainted by politics. So the Intelligence Committee said that they found that the intelligence community who came up with that assessment in 2016 was fundamentally sound. Russia did try to influence the American people. They failed. The ICA, the Intelligence Community Assessment, reflects strong tradecraft. This is, again, Republicans are saying this. Sound analytical reasoning and proper justification of disagreement on the one analytical line where it occurred, said Senator Richard M. Burr, Republican of Carolina, and the panel's chairman. The committee found no reason to dispute the intelligence community's conclusion. So that was in 2020. And then here's another one, just ironically, this is just days ago, 12 days ago, I think. Here is Julian Barnes again wrote on July the 2nd. He said that the CIA review of its assessment of Russian interference in the 2016 election criticized the agency's leadership at the time for rushing their effort, but did not dispute the conclusion that Russia favored the election of Donald J. Trump. Again, this is the current administration. This is the Trump administration. The CIA says that they did not dispute the conclusions of the Russians. Now, further down in there, then they have the question of this whole Steele dossier. A lot of people were talking about that because that does appear something that was intentionally manipulated to try and negatively influence the American population, not from the Russians, but from Democrats against Trump. The classified assessment included an annex with a summary of a dossier created by a former British intelligence officer that contained unverifiable allegations about Mr. Trump. The inclusion of the dossier, the new report found, ran counter to the intelligence community's fundamental tradecraft principles and ultimately undermined the credibility of a key judgment. So the intelligence community said this whole thing relying on the Steele dossier was undercut the credibility of it. And so they said it was an error. It was wrong. And it's been exposed as being very much politically motivated. He continued, when confronted with specific flaws in the dossier by two mission center leaders, one with extensive operational experience and the other with a strong analytical background, the report said that Mr. Brennan, quote, appeared more swayed by the dossier's general conformity with existing theories than legitimate tradecraft. So you have Mr. Brennan here, the former leader in the intelligence community under the Obama administration, is saying, yeah, look, we were going after what we thought was a political motivated. So I don't think there's any doubt that Brennan was going against Trump, didn't like him and wanted to cast aspersions on him. But the question is, does that lead to a coup? Because I don't understand, and I haven't gone through all these. So let me just actually say right up front that there's apparently well over 100 documents that have all kinds of pages in it. So I haven't gone through all these. So I don't know at this point. We're just giving you what we know as of the morning after this thing dropped. So maybe she does have somewhere in there outline how this years-long coup, which is an extremely strong statement and serious charge that better have a lot of very powerful evidence behind it, especially if you're going to refer for charges to the Department of Justice. I haven't seen anything so far that shows, other than some unsavory actions, some definite manipulation. There was some lying going on because apparently Brennan knew that these things weren't true. They manufactured it. They paid this guy that they knew he was a political operative, and they wanted to claim that he was an intelligence person, whatever, that had access. That's all pretty clear true. That's accurate as well. And that might even warrant some censure. But the question is, does that equate to a conspiracy led by President Obama himself, continued on over, quote, years, to lead to a coup to unseat and get rid of Donald Trump? I haven't seen anything on that. So I'm going to be real interested to continue to follow this and see where that information leads, because I haven't seen it so far. And you got to be real careful that you don't, in an effort to uncover the truth, actually have some more exaggerations that also politicize the intelligence community in a different direction, because all of it's bad, every bit of it. What the Obama team did was bad, and if this is something similar, it's bad too, and all of it together undercuts the trust. Tulsi made a statement in that comment there that we have to restore the trust, and I'm all about that. But she's got to be really, really careful with what comes next, because she's got to be able to back this up with some pretty solid evidence, physical evidence that leads to a reasonable conclusion that these things are true. Otherwise, it looks like it's just another attempt to politicize the intelligence community.